So far, we've covered the unreliable Malkuf in the control department, and the logical Yesod in the information department. But we're not done with the upper there yet. There's still 2 more departments in Sephirot to go over. The training department increases the growth rate of all employees while it's working, which can be even greater if they work in that department long enough. What this department does is prepare new employees for the tasks ahead of them, along with regulating company policies and managerial procedures. Yeah. They basically educate and inform others on what to do and the best way to do it. Projects include supply education manuals, which helps employees learn faster. Reinforce work education so that they might be prepared for various situations. And reinforce hiring procedure, which increases the status of hired management employees. Yeah, like that's going to make much difference in the long run. The policies, unfortunately, have their flaws and are determined by Angela, an AI who is about as ruthless as she is capable. And if it isn't clear by now, that's quite a bit. I mean, you're not that negligent with lives by accident. It's also why, even though some would have a suggestion that would reduce the amount of lives or change the policy to make things safer, she wouldn't do so. It's because someone wants her to. Hod, in Kabbalah, means splendor, to withdraw, to surrender, and has sincerity in their actions. It represents God's kindness given to the world through hardships. Sounds about right. And is also associated with the power of prophecy. Well, considering how the flow of time is malleable, that's not outside of possibility. Michelle, as she was otherwise known as, or rather was previously known as, asked if she could join their experiments in an unstable situation. Experiments that went against the head. She liked Carmen. That much wasn't a show. Yeah, she was that manipulative. Michelle, I mean. Michelle? That sounds like a song sung by one of the 4 Beatles of Liverpool. The youngest among them, timid and innocent, was an employee that at a time when the experiment was showing progress, she became an easy target for indoctrination, either willingly supporting the head or just someone that meant well, or perhaps through coercion, possibly with the implied threat to her family, if she had any at that time. Regardless of the reason, she was used as a spy of the head. Their paranoia was strong even then. In times when electronic surveillance wasn't enough to learn what the different companies were doing. They needed someone on the inside to inform them what was going on. She didn't know a disastrous event would happen that would end many of those within the facility, that the situation went worse than her intentions. She thought that she did what she could do, that in this world there wasn't any other option. Carmen was trying to change the world that Michelle apparently gave up on. A didn't take her betrayal well, not considering the leak that she made to a newspaper based on an article within it. Yeah, they have newspapers in the world of Lobotomy Corporation. Well, considering how bad the back streets are, it probably makes good toilet paper. Well, decent enough to be not too rough. Oh, and as for Michelle, for her betrayal, she was rewarded. Did she get what she wanted? Did she accomplish her purpose by destroying them and Carmen? Did A have any right to bear hatred towards her? The answer to that was no. He's no different than her. He never wanted her to die in misery. Like nasty, gossipy rumors. After that, she was turned into Hod. Hod seemed endlessly helpful and cheerful, caring deeply about her employees. She was somewhat unsure of herself and responded well to validation from others. Yeah. Was it validation? Or was it bootlicking? She said that accidents happen in the company, hesitating with her words sometimes. Angela said that approximately 40% of accidents could be prevented if employees showed more initiative. Her job was to provide employees with work manuals and training to reduce the number of accidents and transfers. She didn't see herself as perfect. She had been trying out new programs. They were experimental at that point, including one that was intended to deal with the demanding nature of Lobotomy Corporation. Despite regular checkups, many employees lose their sanity. She feels losing oneself, even though she doesn't interact with abnormalities. She could only hope that the new program was successful. It wasn't. Not even close. And yes, I'm going to tell you why that is. And it's not due to lack of effort. She certainly put in a fair bit of that. Well, she certainly hasn't lost that. That's something I can admit. Well, lost what she was, or rather, who she was. Anyway, back to the topic at hand. One of her employees who transferred to another department committed suicide after losing 90% of her sanity due to Hod's counselling program, which turned out to be due to enkephaleptin addiction withdrawal. Yeah, they came to her for drugs, not comforts, prescribing highly addictive substances like handing out candy. Sounds familiar, doesn't it? In fact, Nedjak was given them as well. Yeah, of course he'd want that. The program was intended to reduce stress, but it's only creating drug addicts, much to Angela's annoyance. Hod's compassion was making things worse, especially as the employees have nothing to lose, and they'll do anything to get what they want. Hod wanted to introduce the program to Nedjak's team. Seriously? Yeah, I'll be getting to him, don't worry. Angela was unlikely to authorize that after what happened. Yeah. Hod was doing more harm than good, even though she meant well with it. Much like when she was human. Yeah. Mistakes of the past, carrying over to the present. I've heard of that before, and not here. But how could it get any worse? You know it's going to get worse. In fact, it's later revealed that employees were forced into the program. Not that it made any difference in the end. Hod wanted to use them herself. Yeah, never a good sign when the dealer samples their own products. Those who have watched Scarface will know how that ended. She thought that she was a good Sephirot, and others don't care how their subordinates are faring, that they're seen as expendable resources, that she cares about them, and wasn't cold-blooded like Yesod, or haphazard like Malkuth, or a I don't give a person like Nedjak. Yes, you've received hints of what he's like by now. It's revealed that Hod was lying to them when they were vulnerable, that no one wanted her counseling, that they couldn't help them, using them so that she could feel better. She's a Sephirot, one that knows what awaits them at the end of the line. Yeah, doesn't feeding her ego make her a kind person? They saw her as hopelessly delusional, that everyone would die there. Hod was in denial, and that she wanted to be a good person. I mean, what's good in an amoral, grimdark world? The doubts persisted. Yeah, I understand the concept of being hopelessly delusional. It's not just those that are in charge that are like this, at least openly. It's those that tell us multiple times to look on the bright side of life. Disgusting. Eric Idle's cruelty knows no bounds, and this was one who operated around the 1970s, otherwise known as the decade that taste forgot. And not just with food. It's also, well, let's just say that the concept political correctness was laughable around that time. As in, that exists? A common side effect of enkephalin is light hallucinations, which disappears soon after 2 or 3 times. This occurred during an abnormality management training meeting. Someone asked during this meeting, "Is she still playing the good Sephirot, or is she in reality a piece of sad scrap metal putting on a good person act?" What appears to ease her conscience is very selfish. At least the others admit they're not perfect. Does training make any difference? As it seems those who will die are going to die, and those who will live will live. This troubles Hod, saying that it's better than doing nothing. Better to prepare something than helplessly wait to die. Yeah. She's a minority in that belief, as they prefer to prepare for death. Yeah, much like the ancient Spartans, except much less equipped to deal with what they were facing when against the 300. She's told that she can't go to paradise no matter what she does, even when she's doing that for all of them. Even the counseling campaign that she's doing, many would prefer rest instead of that. And she's told that it'll keep repeating itself, living with eternal sorrow and remorse. When this is spoken, this made Hod snap by shouting at all of them would be dead by now if she didn't help them. Why aren't they thanking her? That they want her to get rid of them like Malkuth. Even before they complain that she shouldn't be told that she's the bad one there. She then asked if she finally admits to her awful nature. It turned out that she was talking to a drug-based hallucination of herself. Multiple copies of her, in fact. Yeah. That's the last time she should get advice from Nezhak, because she probably took some of the enkephalin herself. Oh, and Nezhak was the one who told her about the side effects of that drug. Just thought I'd make that clear. That's the irony of this. Her training was intended to reduce the number of accidents and transfers, when it didn't make any difference. In fact, it increased the amounts of accidents and transfers due to people losing their minds due to drug withdrawal and death. When she has a meltdown, all agent stats in the facility are reduced by 15. This can also reduce an agent's level. The minimum stats can't get lower than 10. The filter of the screen at this point is just darker screen corners. But don't expect it to remain so. After Quiff-Off level 2, the stats of all agents will decrease by 25 rather than 15. And the screen will get a minor old transmission filter. And the music will be replaced by a jazz-like or Muzak song. Well, there are plenty of elevators in the facility to play that in. After Quiff-Off level 4, the stat reduction will be by 35, and the screen filter will have major effects, distorting the facility, entities, and effects, but not the HUD. and the music will get louder and more distorted. To complete this meltdown, the manager will need to meet the energy quota as before and reach Quiff-Off level 6. After completing the day, Hod will reward the manager with permanent upgrades. All agents now start at level 3, without extra cost, although the manager can still reduce their stats without extra costs, in case they're needed for something specific. And her department won't be affected by Quiff-Off meltdown. After her meltdown, she questioned herself. She previously thought that it could be her second chance as a Sephirot. She thought that she could redeem herself and free herself of her mistakes. But what she did couldn't be undone. A sunken pebble can never float to the surface again. She wanted to be a nice person, to let everyone know that she might be okay there. Was she really being considerate for others? There's no room for something like that in the Lobotomy Corporation. She was a hypocrite. All of those things were for herself. Even so, she'll keep trying to be a nice person. It might be spurious, and some might hate her for that. But if it can save anyone or bring comfort, she can live with that. Hod then shut off her perception filter and said, "So, manager, let's try together in this eternal hell." Yeah, trying to do better as what she is than she did as a human. It's unclear if A would be touched by that or unfeeling. Then again, okay, that's the training department done. What's left? Let's see. Oh yes, there's just one more department. And, ooh, this one's gonna be a bit more interesting. At least in places. Why is that? Well, keep playing to find out. The safety department increases the healing rate of all employees while it's working, while it increases the fortitude and prudence of those that work in that department long enough. This department trains new employees enough to stand a small chance against the threats within it, and responds to potential threats to the company, such as dealing with escaped abnormalities, panicking employees, and security breaches. Yeah, there are other threats besides losing your mind and eldritch horrors messily tearing you apart. They are meticulous and punctual, at least in theory, which is more than I can say about the one in charge of this department. Projects researched here include Regenerator Mark II, which heals employees faster, Mental Corruption Neutralizing Gas, which heals SP of employees on standby, and the Regenerator Distinguisher Modification, which slowly activates the Regenerator even if the department is invaded by hostiles. such as ordeals. Yeah, it distinguishes between allies and enemies. Oh, and at the time I redid this, the security department was renamed the safety department. Not sure why. Perhaps it's because it made more sense. Anyway, let's move on to the Sephirot in charge of this. Nezhak. In Kabbalah, this means eternity, as in perpetuity, victory, or endurance. It represents God's active grace and benevolence in the world. Originally Giovanni, he was one of the patients in Carmen's care who volunteered for Carmen, not A. He hoped that he could revive Carmen back to life. A vain hope, but A didn't want Giovanni to know that. That was his selfishness, believing that he would be happy in a dream that he couldn't wake up from while in a restless sleep. That which was the result of the experiment conducted on him. An experiment involving full research on cogito. That which lowers a person's boundary. Repeated experiments left an indelible mark. The problem was finding the proper drug dosage. All this proceeded in order to save Carmen and the others. Giovanni was the only one who raised his hand when he and the others were asked. He and Carmen knew each other since they were young. It's a little unclear what happened next, but it involved him dying due to that experiment failing. All that was certain is that he died and was reborn as Nezhak, considering that a voice said to him, "No, you can't. In here, you must ask for his permission even for death." It was possible that B said this. Sounds about right. And unfortunate for... Yes, well, the change was drastic. He became an apathetic junkie. He even says it straight that he doesn't like his job. He wants to quit, but he can't. He came there against his will. He doesn't want to be responsible for someone's death. Whoever assigned him there was totally wrong. He feels helpless, and that employees die every day. There will be no one to remember them, no one to commemorate their sacrifice. Well, almost no one, based on one abnormality. He asks what the meaning in saving people's lives, only to see that person dead the next day. What's the point in delaying the inevitable? The people inside have no future. He mentions those little things called plans. Making money, finding love, getting married, having kids. That's the problem with plans. They only have meaning if they can be carried out. And that's even considering that, even in military terms, no plan survives first contact with the enemy. The enemy being abnormalities and ordeals. Largely because they don't always go where you want them to go. Actually, abnormalities and ordeals are easier than the little things, as at least dealing with them is somewhat workable with the right equipment. The little things that he spoke of, much harder considering where they are and the circumstances. So who can blame him for that attitude? I certainly can't. And that's not considering what he is. But that's for another time. Then he asks if he knows how it feels like playing Russian roulette every day. Watching others die is a pain. Surviving the day is a pain. He sees them all as lemmings running off a cliff. Then he asks if they can have a beer vending machine. It's the only thing that makes him happy around there. And it was under the guise of improving the welfare of employees. He complains why he isn't scrapped, wanting to die, seeing as he's trapped in hell. The only way that he can escape is to get high on enkephalin and become completely wasted. He's seen as a rat by Malkuf. He does this on purpose as he wants to get scrapped. In the meantime, he wants to celebrate surviving another day. He cares nothing for the future of the company. He sees no tomorrow there. Yeah, I know. Depressing, isn't it? And as for the beer vending machine, even if the manager says yes, Angela wouldn't allow it. Besides, he's bad enough and unreliable enough as it is without that. I mean, there are quite a few who do that if they feel they have nothing to lose and they're human. He asked what he did wrong. Is he being punished for his sins? He then mockingly shouts as he repents before the manager, before saying that he wants the facility to crumble into pieces. Yeah, substance abuse is a serious problem in our world. It's used by many to take their minds off a torturous reality, which, if they don't have the substance to do so, it becomes even worse, as was demonstrated with Hod's story. Drugs don't solve the problems, they simply mask them. As for Meshach, he's considered lacking in too many qualities to be a good Sephirot by some. Angela rejects calls for him to be replaced. In fact, Meshach is supposed to get drunk on enkephalin. He's supposed to be lethargic. The irony that one in charge of safety is leaving his department as unsafe as he's able to make it. Even if she wanted to replace him, it'll just be another copy of him, who wouldn't be any different. Not that he cares either way. He'll just do what he wants to do. Then there was another accident in his department, where some die, some go insane, some sustain permanent injury. Hod will cheer him up, Yesod will lecture him about the rules that he didn't follow, Malkuth will encourage him, saying, "Let's try harder tomorrow." No one says that it's his fault, but it is. His day starts with death and ends with death, repeating. All employees receive a small dose of a drug to desensitize them to, well, everything, to stop them from losing it. When a lunchmate is found dead, torn into thousands of pieces, it makes it easier to clear up the mess, without feeling anything overwhelming, like a desire to vomit. Can he blame them for depending on those drugs? Everyone is trying their best to bury their heads up their is. Everything might look fine, but no one is. Yeah, that at least explains why drugs are used. Some using them more than others. It also explains why he uses them. Yeah, not a good sign when the one in charge of the safety department uses a narcotic drug to desensitize themselves. Death isn't possible for him, although he tries to kill himself by pouring a bottle of enkephalin into himself to make him rust and cause irreversible damage. Surprisingly, his mind is clean. He feels completely lucid. He believes that if he opens his eyes, it might be somewhere without any of them. He hopes he never sees any of them again. Unfortunately, this resulted in a meltdown, where the recovery system from the main rooms is slower, and employees can't be healed from any sources except at the start of each Krivov meltdown. Yeah, this is where resources, specifically agents, need to be used carefully. After each Krivov meltdown, as previously mentioned, all employees in the facility are healed up to their maximum HP and SP. And employees still can't be healed by any other method, even main rooms. To finish this event, the manager must collect all of the energy required and reach Krivov meltdown level 6, much as the others. After completing that day, Nezhak will reward the manager with permanent upgrades, where the healing done by the main rooms now works in the hallways of the departments. Although 50% lower, and much as the others, his department won't be affected by the Krivov meltdown. After he regained his sanity, he understood that he definitely failed on the experiment. Treatment was needed because his parts were full of enkephalin. As difficult and painful as it is, he didn't want to wake up. It was a while since he had such a long sleep. And considering what was in the facility, it'd be difficult for anyone to sleep. Not without getting nightmares, anyway. I think we can detect a pattern here. He understood that the facility will never be safe. It's no use even if everyone tries. The conclusion is to live, even if life is full of pain. Yeah, Schopenhauer had a point there. If the voice that called to him wants them to find and hold onto a shred of possibility, then what else is there to do but to follow the voice's wish? He was disdainful of A from the start, but now he's thinking that perhaps A's the one that's called him. A came to ruin him, but also to save him. Then the perception filter drops, and he said, I think we're in a similar position. We're both caught in the sins of the past. It's not I who has changed. You're the one who is finally seeing clearly. Yeah. Not that clear, is it? What did he mean by that? What is the true appearance of the Sephirot without the perception filter? Those are good questions. Questions that will hopefully be eventually answered. That's the law of the upper layer completed. Next will be the middle layer. And the layout of that is quite different, as are the Sephirot. Until next time, hail the rabbit!